you're putting out fire after fire after fire. You're not enjoying your work anymore. There isn't a sense of community in it. If I were going to go back, I would say the first thing that I needed to do was tell somebody I'm drowning. I had people that were so angry at me because I didn't raise the flag and say, help. We would have done anything to help you. And they were right. You got to be willing to kind of swallow the pride pill and ask for some help. Winning is a combination of small victories stacked on top of one another. It's not one big decision. It's not one big thing. It's about the small, little, sustainable victories.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now let's get it started. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I'm going to be your host as usual. And in our studio, we have Wayne Wilson. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, Rick. I am excited to be here in the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. Thank you for having me.
We're grateful that you're here. This is going to be an outstanding show. I love shows where, we get into the journey, we get in a little bit deep. And so I think we're going to be able to do that on this episode. So folks, before we get started, if you haven't done already, I would be grateful if you would like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. And without further ado, let's get to it. So Wayne, you've done a lot in your life. Give our audience a little bit of background on who you are and what you do and why you do what you do.
My favorite way to start this conversation is the farmer's commercial. You know the farmer's commercial?
Like, we are farm, that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two.
I love it. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I started my career thinking I was going to be an advertising agent and work in advertising. I started as a mass communications major in college. I got involved in all the media, worked at a television station, editing film, worked as the editor of the college newspaper, worked, was the general manager of the college radio station. I was getting my fingers in all the different kind of media, and I was going to go be an advertising agency. And then I graduated from college, and my first job was selling advertising, and I hated it. I hated it. And it was awful. And what really was happening was that God was calling me to service. And I came home one day in tears and told my wife, I said, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so we designed a transition, and I went to the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. I thought I was going to go in Christian broadcasting, and that was really just a doorway. When I got there, I had to take some pastoral care and counseling classes, and it was just a requirement. And I'm telling you, Rick, I fell in love with those professors. The leaders in that department were the most authentic, genuine, strong human beings I'd ever met in my life. And again, I came home and said to my wife, I don't really know what they do, but I want to be like that. I want to be like them. And I got hooked. I got a job on an adolescent psychiatric unit working 3 to 11. And I had transferred to the Department of Pastoral Care and Counseling. I got a master's degree in pastoral care, pastored a couple of churches, worked in hospitals as chaplains, worked in the state psychiatric hospital as a chaplain, and then went back and got my doctorate in counseling and organizational psychology. And I have been on a mission. I was for 30 years to really help people grow, become better versions of themselves, and to really honor who God has called them to be. And then I got into helping organizations become that. And that was a whole new ball game. And so I built counseling centers in North Carolina with Wake Forest Baptist Health for almost 20 years. For 18 years, I built 4 different counseling centers in 4 different cities. They were all nonprofit Christian counseling centers. And that's how I spent almost 20 years of my life. And then, Rick, I just did not take good care of myself. And at 50, I burned out. I burned and I crashed and burned. It was not pretty. I don't want to tell you and their listeners that story today. It was just not a good thing, but it's because I did not take good care of myself. I did not learn to be a leader who valued self-care. I gave my all to the mission, gave my all to the work, and did not take good care of myself. So that caused a transition. I left mental health completely and started Pivot Coaching and Consulting, Pivot Services. It was actually my pivot. It was my pivot from mental health ministry to coaching. And I was coaching nonprofit leaders. I was coaching small business owners in the area. And one of my clients that I was coaching owned a company called Snyder Fleet Solutions, and he hired me to coach internally. And
Nice.
they didn't have any learning and development at Snyder. They had at the time over 500 employees, 600 employees. They didn't have any orientation. They didn't have any training at all. About 3-4 months after I went to work there, they acquired about 40 locations. They went from 600, 700 employees to 1,200. And so we went relentlessly building training programs. And I founded and built and implemented Snyder University, which was a learning and development platform across the entire organization, from employee orientation to executive coaching, and did that for almost 10 years. And I built and ran that. So I've worked now in a company over 1,000 employees in 11 states, 87 locations. I've built counseling centers in North Carolina area. I've pastored churches. Like I said, I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two.
That's absolutely amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. One of the things that I always think about, when someone goes into coaching is, what is it that you carried forward?
Yeah.
From like your experiences.
Oh my gosh. One of the things that I'm grateful for is it seems like that one stage of my life prepares me for the next stage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't think that's accidental. What I'm doing now, it takes everything I've learned. It takes everything I've ever learned, not only to own and lead pivot coaching and consulting and to be an entrepreneur and to be self-employed, but to then coach executives in companies that are across this country, and to lead small business owners in building their own business requires both the personal element of being a counselor for 20 years and understanding how people learn and grow, and being involved in adult education and in churches and helping on how people learn, how adults learn. And everything that I have learned previously, I've brought into what I'm doing now, which is really an honor. I don't think I could be here had I not been starting counseling centers from scratch and building those and pastoring churches and leading. That's where I learned to lead, was with John Maxwell and pastoring churches in the 80s. And it's just all built on itself. Have you experienced that kind of thing yourself?
I have. I mean, I even think about like what I'm doing now with the podcasting. I had never, ever had any intention of doing any sort of podcasting. Someone had just presented that idea to me.
Yeah.
And, because of my experiences with so many different companies and so many founders, like as a consultant, as a coach, I'm able to understand, the guests, I think at, a deeper level, and ask questions, even from my own experiences. I think about, going way back, 30 years ago when I had a restaurant, there's applications from that experience that, I certainly bring here into these conversations.
The knowledge builds on itself.
It does. I think it's so important, and it's so important to be able to, take information from one place or whatever and be able to apply it, in a different area. You as a coach, you look at, one business in one industry, and then you look at another business in a different industry, and you're just like, there's opportunity to use this process or system or resource or whatever. Here, nobody's thinking of that. And your client gets extraordinary.
So I'll give you an example of that. When I went to Snyder Fleet Solutions, a part of what that business owner, that owner wanted to do when he hired me was to provide learning and development opportunities for his mid-level managers and his executives. That was really the scope of the offering. And as we got there, we started asking, okay, yeah, that's great for the mid-level managers, regional managers, and the directors and the VPs, but what about that first-time commercial branch manager who's never been a manager before? What about that guy who's supervising in a warehouse and has never led people before? And so we started thinking about the entire organization. And that led us to really have this sense of purpose of creating a culture in the organization. And we called it a people-first culture. We said if you take care of your people and you grow your people, that the organization will grow with it. And so our method was to put people first. You know where I learned people-first organizational cultures?
Where's that?
Pastoring the church.
course, of course.
Right. And so people would kind of ask me, how do you think about what you're doing, being the director of professional development for a company like Snyder? And I said, I have a congregation of 1,200 people in 11 states.
You never would have made, from the outside, you never would have made that connection. It's just like, oh, this guy's just really good with people.
Never. I would never have put that together ever. Yeah.
Amazing. One of you use servant leadership as your leadership style and the way you train people. First and foremost, for our audience, just provide some context on what servant leadership is.
Servant leadership is a term that's been around a long time and has taken many forms, right? I learned it in graduate school. Then when I moved to North Carolina, the Center for Congregational Health that was part of the hospital had relationships with the Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro, and they really focused on this thing called servant leaders. And it was really about the leader. Primary purpose is to facilitate, encourage, and help those in the business doing the work. That the leader is not the one doing all the work. The leader is not the person kind of at the top of the hierarchy. It's like if you take that typical leadership pyramid where the leader's at the top and the workers are at the bottom, you flip it upside down.
Yeah.
And now the leader is supporting the entire organization and equipping and facilitating and empowering and resourcing the entire organization. So the leader's primary purpose is to serve, not to be the beneficiary of the organization. The leader is always a beneficiary of the organization, but the mindset of servant leadership has always been flipping that organizational chart on its head, and the leader is serving as a point of reference, as a purpose. Does that help?
It does. But I think the point of confusion sometimes with it is, we still, John Maxwell, had said, I think it was John Maxwell said, if you're a leader, nobody's following you, you're not a leader.
You're not a leader.
Yeah. There's the vision casting that the leader does, which is, that primary function. We've got to create a vision for the people that are following us to do. And so, you talked about the upside down organization. You talked about the idea of the leader essentially serving those that are in support positions. How does that work with the vision for the organization? How does that work with setting the pace for how the organization is going and where it's going, et cetera, et cetera?
Sorry, these things slip into my head and I can't help them. Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, people wander about aimlessly.
Exactly.
The translation in the Message is when there's no vision, people just wander around. They just wander about. They have no sense of direction.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Simon Sinek's TED Talk and video on the why is the number one watched TED Talk and YouTube video clip in the world ever. And that is because he so eloquently captured the power of a why. Why are we doing this? What is this about? Why am I here? Why is this important? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? I saw this live at Snyder Fleet Solutions. I mean, you can't make putting on commercial truck tires sexy. You just can't do it. It's dirty. It's hard. It's hot. It happens 24 hours a day. It's done on the side of the road a lot. It's tough work. But when you attach that to the fact that you are a lifesaver, that the person showing up in a commercial tire truck, changing tires for a semi truck on the side of the road is saving lives, and that the branch manager's purpose is to build a business that supports the employees of that organization. And we're here to enrich the lives. This was our motto. We're here to go the extra mile to enrich the lives of our employees, customers, and vendors. We're here to make a difference in the lives of those people. All of a sudden, changing tires makes it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah.
But it's about the why. And visions are not mission statements. It's not what we're here to accomplish.
Right.
Visions is why are we here? What is this about? What is our purpose?
Yeah.
And if you do a vision statement right, it captures people's hearts. It captures their imagination. It motivates them to get up in the middle of the night and go to work when they get called in, when they don't really feel like it and they don't want to. When they know why they're doing it and they have a purpose for doing it, it changes everything.
Yeah,
No
absolutely.
one can do that but the leader. You can't delegate that
Right.
to other people. The leader has to do it, has to communicate it, and it has to be consistent. And they got to do it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. It's like, remember why we're here, guys. Remember why we're here, right?
Remember how we're here. Remember what we're here to do. Everybody remember why we're here. Remember what we're here to do today. Yeah, every day.
That is so amazing. Your comment about how uninteresting changing tires is, but the idea of saving lives, that's very different. I've got a client where we're working on his story, and essentially he sells chicken, but the why behind that is an incredible story.
Yeah, right.
And it's absolutely, I'm absolutely excited to work on his project because of his why.
Yeah. See, even you get excited when the why is clear. And lots of times a leader will get caught in what is known in the four disciplines of execution as a lag measure, that the money, the profit, the things that come from the business. Well, that's not the why. That's a result. That's a benefit of. It's not the why. It's not why you're doing it.
So the question becomes, we're speaking to entrepreneurs. The question becomes the why behind, servant leadership. From a tactical perspective, it kind of makes sense. We make sure that people have, what they need and all of that. But, what is the real why behind that? What are the outcomes? What kind of benefits do you see for the organization as a whole?
Rick, I don't know kind of how your process as a leader, as a coach, as a consultant works, but one of the first questions that I always ask small business owners and entrepreneurs, one of the first questions I need to understand is, so tell me why you started your business, Rick. And it's usually the third or fourth reason that they give me, the fifth why, that game, the 5 whys. Right?
Yes.
It's usually the fourth or fifth one. Tell me why you really started this. And then it gets emotional. Now they're talking about family and time with their family. And now I'm talking about real stuff. And I'm like, all right, now down right there, you can't forget that. Now we're going to build on that. Right. And when you start hiring employees and you're not the solopreneur anymore, and you start building a team, they're there for the same reason that you started your business. Is to support their family and to provide for their family. And they want the same kinds of margin and benefits and time with their family that you do. So remembering all of that becomes a lens to which you remember why we're here and what this is about. And now you're serving. Now you're showing up. And if you're scaling that business, you're growing that business, you're not scaling it just for profit. You're not scaling it just for that new house or that new car. Though those things will come, you're scaling it for people. And when you're serving and you're serving other people, whatever it is that you're doing, it has a purpose that centers around other people. And now you're making a difference in the world. And that adds a different flavor. I think it adds a different flavor to any business and organization.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. I like the, we're here for a bigger purpose, than money. And I always there was a story kind of escapes my memory, but there was one leader, I learned servant leadership at Regent University. I went there for
Regent. Yep.
Yeah. Went there for about a year.
Yeah.
And one of the stories that they told us about was, I think it was like a paper mill or something like that. And the leader always put his employees first. He always took care of them. He was doing the little things. And they had, I don't know, 30, 40 employees or something like that. And one day the paper mill burns down. And the leader continued paying his team, even though the paper mill was burned down. And, they came back and times are tough. And these folks stepped in where they needed to, and they work for free. They work for reduced pay. And, they were totally committed, not just to the vision for the company, but to that leader.
Did you see this story play out during the pandemic?
I think with my company, I think my team stayed on, longer than they could have.
We had people taking voluntary pay cuts,
Yeah.
of trading hours,
Yeah.
because we were in it together, Rick.
Right.
Right? We were in this together, and it was about getting through a really tough crisis
Yeah.
as a team, as a group, as an organization. You're just not gonna get that if your business is about what the owner gets from it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna have that. You're never gonna have
If those relationships are transactional, you're not going to get that. It's like,
never.
okay, well,
You'll
you can't
never
pay
have
me,
that.
then I'm out the
You'll
door, or
never.
you're going to cut my pay, I'm out the door. And, I think and I've actually seen servant leaders where they helped people that didn't fit out the door and helped them get into, a better fit
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
interesting. There was a guy, Jordan. He was a guest earlier, and he talked about the fact that a woman had to leave. She found a job that was going to pay her twice what he could pay her, and she was so upset. She didn't want to tell him that she had to take care of her family, though, and
Yep.
it was really tough. And it was one of those things where, as the leader, he kind of, when she came in the office, he kind of knew already what was
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
And then, she had such a hard time, and it's like, it's one of those heartbleed stories. But the interesting thing is, like, she was working on a project that was just taking a long time to do.
Mhm.
And they were able to finish the project while she was gone. They called her up and said, "Hey, guess what? We finished the project." And she was
Right?
just as elated as if she'd been
Right?
on the team.
Right. Happens all the time. I was talking to a manager that had left Snyder and was working for another company. And the branch that he was a branch manager of, he was branch manager. Then he went to regional manager. The
Mhm.
first branch that he was a manager of, employees were calling him. They were celebrating that they had hit a new milestone. They had hit a new target. They were calling him.
Wow.
And they were celebrating. Hey, remember we started this and we're there. We hit it. And they're calling him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're still thinking about the goal that they had set together and chasing it together. Yeah.
One of my friends had talked about, a lot of times, if we look at companies the way we look at communities, like the old school communities, it's just like everybody's bringing their different skill set, to make the community survive. So it's not just about, earning money, but it's about, hey, if everybody does their job, then the community thrives. If people don't, then, it's a lot harder. And it all comes down to the leader. How's the leader leading that community? Absolutely love that.
Yeah. 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 That sense of community is easy to get lost in a big world, in a virtual world, and in a world of big corporations. It's hard because sometimes we don't live in communities anymore. We live isolated, or we live in large organizations or cities or whatever, and we lose a sense of, getting your meat from the butcher.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we do. It's funny, like going up to New York or something like that, and you still have like the little shops, and everybody knows everybody. Even though it's a big city, it's amazing that the sense of human touch is, that can't be overstated. I don't think that can be overstated.
I don't think so either. I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the challenges that we talked about briefly is, and I want to dive into it, is the survival trap.
Yeah.
You want to explain to our audience what that is?
Well, the survival trap grows out of transactional relationships.
Mm-hmm.
The survival trap I experienced it. I'll give the listeners a short version of this story. When I went to work at running the counseling centers for Wake Forest, there was a clear sense of mission. I absolutely knew that I knew what I was there to do, and really genuinely knew that God had prepared me, designed me, and called me to do this. And we did it for many, many years. And then 15 years in, now there's 4 counseling centers, there's 4 nonprofit boards, there's 20 some staff members, there's payroll, there's fundraising events, there's accounts receivables, there's insurance billing that has to be done. I got lost in the weeds, Rick. I running 4 businesses and being an executive over 4 counseling centers, and it had become about the day-to-day tasks. You get lost in the weeds, that that
Yeah.
idea of being lost in the weeds. And so I went from mission and purpose to just surviving, just showing up day to day. And it was just about hitting payroll or just about, making enough money in the fundraiser to keep the lights on and pay the rent. And now it's not about those human beings who come to the counseling center anymore. And I'm the leader and I'm doing exactly what God called me to do, but I'm not really immersed in the mission anymore. I'm just surviving. Let me tell you, it was not fun. And it made it really hard. And that's where I really started becoming aware of the pressure of the sense of being under pressure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what is that about? And what drives a leader, an entrepreneur, a business executive who's living constantly under pressure? Well, I can almost guarantee you that in one way or another, they have slipped into survival.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what we talked about earlier, sense of purpose, sense of mission, sense of a
Yeah.
vision for the business, connection to the people associated with it, they've lost it. They lost track of it. If they had it, I had it. And then I lost track of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you've never had it, if it's always been a transactional business, if it's always been, build the business, sell it, flip it, make money and move on. If it's always been about the transaction, then the organization has never had a purpose other than just profit. And that is a formula for survival.
What are symptoms of slipping into that? You went into the business went to the organization. You're totally mission oriented, et cetera, and you're going on. You're on this. I imagine you were on a slippery slope, and then suddenly,
it occurs over. If you start a business with a clear purpose, a clear why, and then you find yourself in survival mode. You're experiencing day-to-day pressure. You're focused on all the challenges in front of you. You're putting out fire after fire after fire.
Yeah.
You're not enjoying your work anymore. There isn't a sense of community in it. All you're doing is solving one problem after another problem. Right. It happens over time. It's a gradual slipping of focus and sense of purpose and mission and connection to the people that you're doing it with. And it really is an end result. What you notice, what I noticed, what I should have noticed, what I help leaders notice now is if we get on 3 or 4 coaching calls and all they're talking about is the fire in front of them. They solve one fire, they go to the next fire, they go to the next fire, they go to the next fire. You're in survival.
Obviously, that's not sustainable. I mean, that's something that would lead to burnout. That's something that leads to, hey, you know what? I quit. I can't do this anymore.
I can't do this anymore. That is exactly where it leads to. I've seen it commercial branch managers and tire centers. I've seen it in warehouse managers. I've seen it in counseling center directors. I've seen it in therapists. They just get to that place, and that's where your head is. And you hear yourself saying it first. You don't say it out loud first, but you hear yourself thinking, I can't do this. I can't keep doing this. And that's you're in deep water when you hear yourself thinking.
Yeah. And I imagine you're saying it to yourself. You're not even looking to other people to say, hey, you know what? I can't do this. Right?
No, I was ashamed to say it out loud. Right? I mean,
right.
I'd started most of these counseling centers and from scratch and built them and built the team and recruited the board members and cast the vision and how could I say I can't do this anymore? I can't say that, right? And so you end up isolating yourself out of a sense of shame that I can't say that out loud. I can't admit that, and that just adds to the complexity of it. Now you can't. You're thinking it. You're hearing yourself thinking it, and you wake up. First thing when you wake up, I don't know if you've ever experienced this. First, your eyes open. First thing, and then you think, "Gosh, oh gosh," and you're just thinking about the crisis that you got to solve that day. And you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, it's just not fun."
So how do we get out of that? I mean, so it sneaks up on us, right? So it's not like we're necessarily going to say, "Hey, I'm turning into this," and because what we do is we say, "Hey, well, this is just a one-time thing. I'm just going to deal with this, real quick, and I'm going to move on to the next thing. I'm not going to worry about the relationship." That becomes a pattern. And suddenly, we're in this pressure pot. We're in this pressure cooker. How do we reverse this? How do we get out of that space so we can get back to operating at our highest and best?
Well, you know how a minute ago you were talking about how this occurs over time and it becomes a gradual thing. Well, that's the way you're going to solve it.
Why did I know you were going to say that?
Yeah. You are not going to flip a switch and change this overnight. If I were going to go back and coach me, I would say the first thing that I needed to do is tell somebody I'm drowning here, and figure out what that was about, right? Because you're not going to get out of that by yourself. That was what tripped me up. What sent me straight to burnout. And I had people when I crashed and hit the wall and I left, I had people that were so angry at me, Rick, because I didn't raise the flag and say help. They said, we would have done anything to help you, and they were right. So you got to speak up, and you got to be willing to kind of swallow the pride pill and put the ego aside and raise the flag and ask for some help. And that can come in a variety of different ways, a variety of different kinds of help. But you can't do it alone. And two, then it's a gradual process of kind of unraveling what got raveled up.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes you're doing everything yourself, and now you've got to face that. I work with business entrepreneurs who built businesses, and they're now trying to scale it and still doing everything themselves, and they can't scale it because they're doing everything themselves. They haven't learned to delegate, build leaders, hold people accountable. They haven't learned to do that yet. So they're doing everything themselves. Maybe it's that, right? Maybe you don't trust people, so you take everything on yourself. I just talked with a lawyer not too long ago who just kind of needed to be in control of everything. He just was afraid, right? So it was a trust thing. So you got to kind of figure out what's driving the isolation, what's driving the sense of being in the weeds all the time, and just kind of start unraveling it backwards. And it will ultimately, and this is probably one of the hardest things I have to do as a coach. You can talk about what you've experienced, but ultimately the leader's got to face the reality that they've probably created this in one way or another, or they've been a part of creating this. This did not happen to you, my friend.
Yeah.
You created this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow.
My gosh, right? And it took me probably 5 years looking back on what happened to me to realize I kind of got to take some responsibility for a lot of that I created that. And so it's ultimately a long, hard look in the mirror and changing some of the way that you lead to fix it, to unravel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ultimately. Doesn't start there, but ultimately it's going to end in being a different kind of leader.
It's such an important lesson, and not just for yourself. It's like you're going to ultimately likely develop other leaders as well, and to be able to show them and remind them.
I promise you, if you're I promise you, sir, if you're in survival mode and you figure it out, one of the things you're going to do differently is you're going to learn to build other leaders around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going to learn to rely on them and treasure them and lead with them. And that is the solution.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is the solution.
I think leading from experience, or, teaching that from experience is really just so much more authentic. It's like one thing to do it from theory. It's like, oh, well, you're going to burn out, but something else to say, what happened to me? I don't want that to happen to you. I mean, that's an important conversation. Yeah. Do you want to talk about your book?
Yeah. The book is something that I give to new clients to say, here's where we're headed. Here's what we're going to do. And I promise you, if you're my client, Rick, and you and I are in a conversation, I'm going to look you in the eye and I'm going to say, I'm going to promise you, we're going to move you from pressure to purpose. Promise you. And we're going to peel the onion and we're going to get there together. And there are 5 basic things that need to happen. I call them moves. Because they're not steps like, hey, you do this and then you do this. It's kind of like a process that you work through, and when you get to a certain stage, you move into the next one. And so there's a movement, and the first one is you got to take stock. So PIVOT, pivot, is both my business, my pivot, and it's my process. In quick summary, the acronym pivot is pause in the present, take stock of what's going on. PI, internalize that. What are the internal messages that are driving that? What are the beliefs driving that? What are the feelings driving that? What are the fears driving that? What are the values that should be driving that? So you got to do a little introspection, a little reflection. So internalize that. When you've got a clear picture of the present, what's going on, and you've internalized that and you kind of clarified your values, now you can build a new vision. There's hard research that says you cannot create a picture of the future until you have kind of cleared the cobwebs of the past. If you're living in the past, you're living in fear, you're living in regret, you can't create a new vision. You can't do it.
Mm.
So once you kind of cleared the cobwebs, now we're going to create a new vision, a compelling picture of the future. It's compelling for you. It's compelling for others. Now we know where you're going. Now we know your why. Now we know what this is about, why it's about. And if you're trying to produce a certain amount of money, why is that? And so we're going to create a vision, PIV. Now we're going to operationalize that. We're going to put it into a strategy. We're going to put it step by step. We're going to operationalize a plan, and then we're going to put timetable on it. We're going to track it together, and we're going to execute it. Snyder, PIVOT.
That's amazing.
Pivot is a process.
That's those pastor skills coming back for you.
Right on, bro. That's exactly right. Right. That's my sermon in a book from page to page. And so I'll walk people through what does that look like. So you can buy the book and do it yourself. And I encourage people to do that. And then when you need a guide, when you need somebody to guide you through that process, help you really dissect the internalization, create a vision, strategize it, put it in step by step. You need some accountability for the T. That's what I'm here for. That's what I do. So then we work the process together. I've been doing this now in one form or another for over 30 years, and I guarantee people results if they'll work the process and commit to the timetable and the tracking part. It will happen. We will rebuild your life, and we will rebuild your business. Yes.
And then name of the book one more time.
The Pivot Process: 5 Moves from Pressure to Purpose.
Awesome. And where can people buy that?
Amazon.com. It's in Kindle and Amazon.com. It's not been put into Audible yet, but it is available in paperback and Kindle version on Amazon.
Cool. Any plan for audio?
Yeah, it's just a matter of time, Rick. It's just a matter of time. Yeah. I'm working now. I'm working through some new material on levels of consciousness from David Hawkins and comparing that, integrating that with Bob Anderson's work in mastering leadership and the leadership circle. And they blend so magically together. And so right now I'm working on I call it the leader's ladder. It's really about leading from various levels of consciousness, leading from courage and presence is different than leading from fear or pride.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's what I'm working on right now. So that kind of took priority over doing the audio version of that.
Hey, I get it. That sounds fun. That sounds way more fun. I have a question for you that I ask all of my guests. And so the question is, the name of the show, of course, is The Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. Winning in and of itself is something that we can define. It can be our vision. The hard part sometimes is maintaining that relentless pursuit because, life happens, life is unpredictable as it was. What would you recommend to our audience? What kind of things would you recommend to our audience to encourage them to maintain that relentless pursuit?
Think small, not big.
You got to dig into that.
Think small. Think, I know, right? That's the pain point though. Think small, not big. Big is not sustainable.
Okay.
Big, your big vision of your business and your future is layer upon layer upon layer of success. We all now know this from the wonderful people who've researched this and broke this apart. Winning is a combination of small victories stacked on top of one another. It's not one big decision. It's not one big thing. You do not walk out tomorrow and run a marathon. You start walking. It's one little step built on top of another. It's about the small, little, sustainable victories. Think small, not big. The problem with the relentless pursuit of winning is that it has to be sustainable.
It does. It is not relentless otherwise.
It can't, right? It'll fall apart, right? And we've all seen, there are so many examples of that. It falls apart because you can't sustain it.
Yep. Good stuff. If someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
2 ways. I've really concentrated my presence on LinkedIn. You can see my work around the levels of consciousness. You can get news. You can see newsletters there and posts about the pivot process. You can catch videos there. You can read more about me there. You can connect with me. You can book an appointment there. And then coachdrwayne.com is my website that I'm building, working on, and will be the place to connect with me to get podcasts or book an appointment. Appointments with me are the first 2 or 3 is an inquiry. I don't charge people for those. It's what's going on with you? What do you want? And can I help you? Yeah. When we solve those problems, then I will talk to people about what engagement looks like and what it'll cost. But it starts with a conversation. I've been at this too long, Rick. It's about the relationship and it's about a conversation. So I want people to just feel free to reach out, book an appointment. Let's just have a conversation. Let's just figure out what's going on with you, what you want, and how I can help you. CoachDrWayne.com.
That's wonderful. We'll get that on your show notes page. Wayne, anything you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah. So just thank you, sir, for the focus on leading with integrity. I can hear in your voice. I can tell it in our conversations. I know it's important to you. And I know that winning is important, but winning with integrity is sustainable. And so I just appreciate how you consistently are bringing your leaders back to pay some attention to who you are and what's most important to you, and don't lose sight of that. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I've been looking forward to it. Thank you.
Awesome. And folks, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We'll catch you next time.